Jeremy and Joe, good morning. Happy hump day. Right, people still say that?
Happy hump day?
Yeah.
I don't see the commercials much anymore.
Yeah, maybe not. Paul, good morning.
Hello, guys. How are you?
Paul, what would your reaction be if I told you that producer Josh, who attended the game last night, sat down in his seat in the first period and never left it the whole game? No intermission breaks, nothing. No nachos.
Not let me stretch my legs.
Not a bathroom
nothing.
run. Just sat down and stayed there the whole game.
He was hoping he'd get a ride on the Zamboni. They didn't invite him, so I'm sure he was upset about that.
Would you have gotten up if they said, come on the Fan Zam?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all right. Good.
Riding on a Zamboni, that's awesome. Why not?
So he was actually holding out for more. He wanted more from the
True or false, you were trying to get on the Lion King cam the whole time or something like that.
Yeah, my dad was actually going to lift me up.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go. Perfect. All right.
Yeah, you had Sean McDermott on the Zamboni. We should have had, the way the game went last night, should it have been drought-themed last night? Should they have Kyle Williams in the building and Fred Jackson,
I mean, we can have a lot of fun with that later. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Paul, good morning. We're laughing because, it takes the pain away. I mean, the Sabres last night, Lindy Ruff said too many passengers. They lose to a Sharks team that had 11 regulations going into that game. And, whatever, Paul, whether it's rock bottom or whatever it is, they find ways to continue to embarrass themselves. Or in Montreal, Lindy calls it a must-win game. They're down 3-0 after the first. Last night, okay, get right against the Sharks, who are a bad team. And, it's just... It
wasn't even, Paul, it was close in the third, but they weren't playing great the whole time.
It's
right?
all snowballing, Paul, I guess is what I was getting to.
Yeah, I mean, the Sharks had lost 14 of 16 and 17 out of 20. You gave up 4 goals in the third period to a team that's 29th in goal scoring. And just to be a no-show, I mean, you don't show up at all. I mean, that's just... And, I asked, do you think you guys were overconfident? And Thompson goes, I would hope not. But he also said, if you watch the game, he said, actions speak louder than words. He said it certainly looked like it, didn't it?
Yeah.
With the way they played. So, and I've said this to you guys before because the players have said this, a couple of times. Well, we thought it was going to be easy. Well, this, that, and it's like, how could this team ever think it's going to be easy? There are guys on this team that have never played in a playoff game. This franchise hasn't had a playoff game in 14 years. How could this team in last place in the Eastern Conference and 29th place in the NHL ever be overconfident?
Do you think, Paul, I think Lindy got this question, right, last night, like if the players had checked out, and he says no. I kind of think he can't really say yes there, because do you think that's maybe part of... Well, it would only be last night, though, right? Because we had talked about how in the Montreal games, they looked engaged, they just made mental mistakes.
That's exactly what he said. He goes, if they were checked out, he goes, they would have checked out last night against Montreal. And they didn't check out in that game, so it's certainly. But the other thing is too, it's kind of disrespectful to their coach the way they act too. I mean, he sits there and talks about goals that he wants to set for the season, and the first 2 games are fine, and then it's like who cares about your goals? I mean, and they lose 4 games in a row. I mean, it's just when you get out, you gotta go 3-1-1, and you're 2-0, and you're looking like maybe you can do at least for the first 5 game segment. Next thing you know, you've lost 4 in a row, and that's that I don't know. I just think they disrespect their coaches. I mean, they've had 2 different coaches who they very rarely play the way those 2 coaches wanted them to play, and in both cases, when they do and when they did, they play pretty well, they look like a pretty good hockey team, but they just don't seem to want to like the Montreal game. Your coach told you how many times you cannot take penalties against the Montreal Canadiens. You just can't. And they promptly go out and take 5 penalties in the first period and give up 4 power plays and give up 2 goals. To me, it's almost disrespectful the way they just don't listen to their coaches. They don't do what the coaches say. They don't listen to them very often. not enough. Because if they did, maybe we would be talking about meaningful games.
Is that what do you think that is? Do you think that is just the players being arrogant at times? Do you think it's they don't focus in more often than other teams? Because, like you said, like it's been happening for a couple of years now. I'm always wondering like why that seems to happen. With
Would it be too hot a take, Paul, to say these players kind of know the organization doesn't take it seriously, so they don't?
I don't know if they don't take it seriously. They just don't listen. I mean, it's hard to say. It really is. It's hard to say how the whole thing with it, and these guys aren't responsible for the whole thing. Is hard to figure. It's hard to talk about. It's not like they've never had any good players in 14 years, but yet. You would think by accident you would have played a playoff game by now, especially some of the players that have been here. O'Reilly, Eichel, Reinhart, you can just keep naming them. I mean, it's not like they haven't ever had good players here, but somehow or another it doesn't work here, and then it does work when they go somewhere else. And I can't I have no explanation for that. I just don't. I don't understand how it keeps happening here. And then another good player shows up and he doesn't do well here, but then he gets tired of losing, so he goes somewhere else and does well. And I just don't have any explanation for you.
Paul Hamilton joining us. His appearance brought to you by Raylax Honda. Raylax, we got this. Let's get a couple calls in here with Paul. RJ in Georgia. Hey, RJ, good morning.
Good morning, guys. I do a little daily trivia with my brother and cousin. Kind of stole that idea from you guys. Take it or leave it. The Sabres have had 22 goalies since Miller left playing a game, and I feel like we're like that Browns jersey with their quarterbacks. But I'm wondering how many can you guys come up with?
Of the goalies that have played since Miller?
Of the goalies, there's 22 of them.
I mean, we'd be here the rest of the segment.
You'd be here until May. I think of the day, because I've never heard of 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, Joe's.
I'm pretty good at
when
this.
it comes to Sabres drought trivia.
Yeah, I can crack my knuckles and get down to into the Connor Knapps of the world.
I was just going to say,
if I really need
who do you think
to,
the 3 are that he hasn't heard of?
Connor Knapp, Nathan Lewin, and
Michael Hauser. You going to give him that? Maybe that or
Matt Hackett.
Matt Hatton.
I was going to go with who's the guy they traded for? Jason Kasdorf.
Okay. There you go.
No one knows who that is.
Paul,
Maybe Paul does. Paul might know who that is.
Paul, to the goaltending point, though, I kind of keyed in on that yesterday. We talked to Owen about this in the first segment, just to get former goalie's thoughts on what's happening in goal. And, they find their way sometimes to veteran guys that play well. Craig Anderson played pretty well for them.
Reimer's played well at times this year.
Reimer has played well at times, but what they are doing is they are bargain shopping at the backup goaltender position. Reimer's a guy that they waived and then they brought back, while Levi Cook's down in Rochester. And we asked Lindy yesterday, you gonna get Levi up here? Like, how are you handling this? Because, man, Luukkonen gave us a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like to have consistent goaltending, and I feel like he has not given us that glimpse this year. And the Levi dream is alive, and I don't know what the right steps are, and I'm not sure the Sabres know necessarily the right steps here. But what do you make of what it should look like in goal going forward?
In my opinion, with the way this season's going now, Levi shouldn't touch the National Hockey League. Let him. I would think the right thing to do would be let him continue to have his all-star season in Rochester. The Amerks are doing very well. And let's see where he can take that team for this year. They're, to me, having him up here for what? It just, every time he comes up here, it doesn't go well for him. And I would just let it be for this year and finish it out in Rochester. Luukkonen is another puzzle. I mean, for 36 games, was it, after January 1st? His numbers were some of the best in the National Hockey League, and he played the second most games in the National Hockey League, and it looked like the Sabres had their goalie. and then this year very inconsistent. At times it looks good. Certainly didn't look good yesterday. Reimer in Montreal, I was only maybe the second game I didn't like of his this year. I mean, he had one start that wasn't good, and there were 2 goals in Montreal that he should have had, and Lindy was upset about the overtime winner, and but overall I think he's been fine as far as the backup, but Luukkonen has just been very, very inconsistent. He'll go on little streaks this year where he's playing very well, puts up good numbers, and then it goes away. And it's hard to say. It's hard to say why. It's like, where was that guy last year that was going to build on that season and get even better and looked like a number 1 goalie in the NHL? What happened to him?
Yeah. And really, you wouldn't expect movement there, right? Like, isn't the plan just plug and play whoever, Reimer or whoever would be as the backup until Levi's ready to join Luukkonen as the tandem in the NHL?
And I don't know if the 2 of them can be a tandem in the NHL because from everything I've seen, they both have to play a lot. They're the type of goalie that if they don't play a lot, they're not very good. Now, this year, that hasn't worked out very well for Luukkonen. In the beginning of the year, it didn't work out because they were going back and forth, playing one game, then other guy played the other. Neither one looked good. And then once Levi went down, Luukkonen did start looking good for a bit because, he was getting the starts, and it's like, well, all right, now he's getting back to it because he's getting a chance to play. So that's what I wonder. I wonder if they ever could be a tandem together because it seems like if they're not playing, they just aren't very good.
Do you think Lindy deserves any blame, Paul? Like, I think Adams is more the lightning rod for most. I don't hear a lot of Lindy criticism. I don't even know what it would really be, but what about from you? Like, should the coach bear any of the brunt for what's going on this year?
Yeah, I think in the NHL, coaches bear too much brunt at times, and nobody ever wants to blame the players. But sure, I mean, he has to take responsibility. Why can't you get your point across to your players? I mean, you have a system that looks like it's a good system and looks like it works, but why can't you get your players to play it all the time? I mean, why are they not listening to you? Why, when you tell them forcefully that you guys can't take penalties, and next thing you know, it was one of the most undisciplined periods I've seen, and they take 5, well, something's not right. I mean, your connection with your players isn't there. Why are you not connecting with your players? Why, when you tell them to do something, they're not doing it? Why, when you've laid down a game plan, it's not always executed or even close? And so, yeah, certainly that, why are your special teams? He is in charge of bringing special teams here, and it's his power play. It's his penalty kill. Why all of a sudden has that gone down the drain? Or not all of a sudden, but it hasn't gotten any better under him. And why is that? I mean, especially the power play. Why can't he get a power play going or devise a power play that could be better and not be near the bottom of the league?
Paul Hamilton on the Western Hotline. Paul, we look forward to the deadline Friday. Are you expecting movement? Are you expecting something big, something small? It's a different kind of deadline. You and I have talked about it on this show, saying that Kevin Adams shouldn't really work in prospects and picks. I might be changing that tune a bit because in order to get players, you might have to get picks that you can then use in the summer. I don't know. It feels like they're kind of in an impossible spot, and people don't have a lot of faith that there will be much movement.
Yeah, and Yoki Haru would be the one that probably is prospects or picks. I think it's time to move on from that, and I think they're looking to move on from that, and I don't think he would be upset if that happened. I would still continue to try to sign Zucker and Greenway. I don't think I would be interested in trading them. If I got to take them past the deadline, then I'd take them past the deadline. So that's the way I would do it. As far as what am I expecting, I've done too many trade deadlines, and they always go opposite of what you think. You think, there's going to be a lot of movement around the NHL, and we're sitting there at 225 going, well, there have been about 4 trades in the league. When is this movement going to start? And then when it's like, geez, you haven't heard much about anything going on. Next thing you know, players are being traded all over the place. So I just don't. I've learned not to expect anything from a trade deadline, because if you start expecting it, you usually get the opposite.
So what you're saying is we should expect nothing, and then they're going to make a bunch of big trades on Friday.
There you go. That might work. That might work.
It is looking like it's early, but it might be a seller's market. Trent Frederick went for a second and a pick and a prospect. Dreger was talking about how Scott Lawton is getting offers for a first. I've asked you that about Zucker and Greenway. Even then, they would want extensions for these two players.
And I learned my lesson about that too, thinking, well, what are you going to get for Paul Gaustad?
And then you get a first.
A number 1 pick? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it can happen.
Like, how did that happen? So I learned my lesson there too. It's just like you never know what somebody might offer for a player. And they were able to pull off a hockey trade, which is kind of rare around trade deadline day last year in the Byram trade. That would be the type of trade I would be looking for. But, to try, trade for a guy who was on an expiring contract that you got to sign, well, you better be, if you're the Buffalo Sabres, it's not like you're looking for a rental, so you better know that you can sign this guy. Mm-hmm. If you're going to go trade for him and trade assets for him, and get a guy who's going to be a restricted or unrestricted free agent, you got to know that you can sign the guy. So, obviously, they're not going to be looking for rentals, and that's a lot of rentals are going to be traded here. So, I know people are going to be very, very disappointed if not much is done by the Buffalo Sabres. But, the trades that the Buffalo Sabres, I think, need to be involved in typically are done in the offseason or around draft time.
Paul Hamilton on the Western Hotline. Thank you, Paul.
Take care, guys.
We'll chat later in the week. Deadline day is Friday.